Hey students, okay, so this is the last video I'm gonna record for the day, and this is about correlation analysis, so the other type of associative analysis. So we're still working in the craft beer dataset, and what we're gonna look at specifically is whether there is a correlation between two metric scaled variables. So I took a quick look, and I think it would be useful to look at the variable lifestyle craft beer enthusiasm, which is a question that allows people to indicate to what extent they consider themselves a craft beer enthusiast. As you can see, this is a scale from 1 to 5. This is an interval scale, so this is perfectly meeting the requirements for a correlation analysis. The second variable that I want to actually pair this with, or look at the correlation with, is the subjective knowledge index variable that we created in one of the earlier videos, which is that overall subjective knowledge idea that was combined based on the separate 6 items that we merged together. This is also an interval scaled variable, so we can use it. Awesome. Let's go ahead and show you guys where the correlation analysis can be found. So we click on Analyze, and then we click on Correlate, and whoopsie daisy, and then we go to Bivariate. We click Bivariate, and on the left side here we find the variables we want, which are the lifestyle variable, and all the way on the bottom we have the computed subjective knowledge question as well. So cool, we have our two variables in here. That is enough. We don't have to touch any of these options. We just want to make sure Pearson correlation is on, two-tailed is on, and this is normally already there by default, so we don't really have to worry about it. This is all good. Let's click OK. And here's our beautiful output. We have our two variables here listed next to each other as well as underneath each other, and as you remember from class, there's this imaginary diagonal line that cuts your output table in two sides that are basically mirrors of each other, are identical to each other. So we could interpret this box basically, or this one, wouldn't matter. So let's look at this one here. Lifestyle, I consider myself a craft beer enthusiast. Whether that correlates with subjective knowledge. So we find a significance, two-tailed, of 0.000. As you know by now, this is really clear evidence that we did find a significant relationship, because this indicates that there is not enough support for the null hypothesis. So in other words, we go for the alternative hypothesis, which says that there is indeed a significant relationship. So now that we know there is a relationship, let's take a look at the Pearson correlation coefficient to see how strong that relationship is and in what direction it is. The Pearson correlation coefficient is a number that always ranges between -1 and +1. Now in this case, it is 0.789. So it is a positive number. It is not below 0. It's not minus. It doesn't have a minus sign in front. So we already know that the relationship is positive. In addition, we can also judge based on the absolute value that it is relatively close to 1. It is 0.789. So if you round up, it's 0.8. That's relatively strong, actually. So we found a pretty strong positive relationship, so positive correlation between the variable I consider myself a craft beer enthusiast and the subjective knowledge that people have about craft beer. So in layman's terms, this basically just means that the more people consider themselves craft beer enthusiasts, also the higher their subjective knowledge is. Or you can reverse that and say the higher people's subjective knowledge is, the more they consider themselves craft beer enthusiasts. So in other words, this goes hand in hand. People who are really stoked about craft beer also tend to think they know much about it. So this is really what we found here. As you know as well, we find here correlation coefficients of exactly 1. That is because they are in the intersection of two variables that are basically the same variable. So it's the correlation against itself. Same happened here. You also see, by the way, sample size, which is how many people answered this question or those questions. That can, of course, vary because not everyone may have answered both. So yeah, but this is the most important thing to look at with correlation. Step 1 is definitely only include metric scaled variables. Don't try to run a correlation on nominal or ordinal variables. Second thing is look at your significance value and then look at your Pearson correlation coefficient. Okay, that's it.